Hello, everybody. I wanted to talk about the Oceangate documentary. I found that quite an interesting documentary. It's very sad. It's basically five people went down in the sub. A guy called Stockton Rush, who was the CEO of Oceangate, and he was really the inventor of that experimental carbon fiber vessel. P.H. Nargilé, who was a French explorer and expert on the Titanic, and there were three others. Hamish Harding. I can't remember the exact name of the. Hamish Harding is a billionaire. There's another billionaire on there as well. So very rich people that were going down. But he went down with his son. I think it was something like Suleiman. And his son was only 17 years old. So very sad that they lost their lives. But as explained in the documentary, the carbon fiber hull that was used on the Titan sub was an experimental, you know, it's not really been used very often. I think on the Challenger Deep, um, there was another sub that they had before. Steve Fossett had, who died in a separate incident, not related to underwater exploration. Um, they essentially on submersibles. They don't really, implode because um, they tend to use titanium. But the problem is using titanium. What I ascertained from reading about this is it's quite heavy, so you need a large support vessel constantly there to carry this thing around, and you also need a larger kind of buoyancy. So it might have been for aesthetic reasons as well. You can just have the sub there on its own, obviously for financial reasons, but also I think also for aesthetic reasons, because the guy, what you got from reading about him and the documentary and so on, was that he was quite a vain person. He was quite a narcissistic person, and therefore, I think aesthetic reasons would have been very high on his kind of. So it looked good. Vision from the. But when you went into the sub, you saw a lot of problems. So when he was recording himself going down, the sub had these horrendous crackling noises. So it's not clear if the actual sub, before it imploded, whether there were crackling noises heard by the people. It was very terrifying, even when you're watching documentary, it's very scary that he was hearing these crackling noises, and then he decided that I'm not going to go to 4,000, I'm going to stop at it was about 3,800 meters and go back up. So when you go into those depths, you're obviously taking a risk. There's also the danger that the sub could be lost at sea. Could lose communications, could lose power. But as James Cameron explains, one of your issues should not be that the sub implodes. That should be taken care of by the engineering. In my opinion, people connected to Oceangate should have been more vocal. There was one guy who was like a whistleblower, David Lockridge, but the people there connected should have been more vocal about potentially, ending this whole enterprise and saying that this is just not working. It's carbon fiber. It's too risky. The popping sounds by themselves should have been enough to. Yeah, he kind of brushed a lot of these complaints aside. He said it was like seasoning. He said it was like you would hear. It's every time you take a sub down, you hear like loud bangs. So these problems were building up over time, and he'd already decommissioned an earlier hull on the Titan. So they brought in a new hull. I think this is Titan 2, right? Or they brought in a new. Yeah. So, so anyway, those are my thoughts. I thought both the documentary, I saw the BBC one. I think the Discovery one's even longer actually. If you've got Discovery Channel, that's like an abbreviated version of the same documentary. That's also quite scary when she's on the boat listening to the sounds, and then all of a sudden they hear this loud bang, and they're not sure what it is. And as it turned out, it was actually the implosion. So both the documentaries I thought were very good. I don't know, leave your comments down below. What do you think? So yeah, he was hearing these loud popping noises, and it's unclear whether or not the people on board the Titan. Now they did have an acoustic monitoring system on board the ship, on board the submersible, I should say, which was supposed to monitor the rips, or the changes of carbon fiber, or sounds. But I think then basically he knew that there was something wrong with it, but he just ignored the data. But the point is, they shouldn't have had to have that kind of thing anyway. So the fact that they even got that is like madness in itself. It's just total madness. I mean, in my opinion, as soon as I saw that on a documentary and they said he's got this monitoring, acoustic monitoring, I thought this guy's nuts. Why does he even need that? The fact that he's got that, for carbon fiber, it doesn't really show anything anyway. You just don't know when it's going to explode. And the fact that there were rips in it anyway, and he could hear the popping sounds, they should have just shut it down straight away. Anyway, those are my opinions. Leave your comments down below. I know, this isn't related to what I normally talk about on the channel, but I thought it was very interesting. I seem to be fascinated by all these kind of doom mongering type. I should do one every week, right? Anyway, thanks for watching.